What if I told you that behind the glittering lights of Hollywood and the chaos of celebrity feuds lies a truth so shocking that it could shatter reputations, careers, and even lifelong friendships? Tonight, we dive deep into the Blake Lively saga. The courtroom battles the media firestorm and the betrayals no one saw coming. Blake Lively, once known as the picture-perfect Hollywood starlet, beloved by millions for her fashion, her charisma, and her golden family image, now finds herself standing at the center of a legal storm that feels less like a simple lawsuit and more like an unfolding Hollywood thriller, where each day brings new revelations, new accusations, and new fractures in the carefully constructed facade that has long defined her public identity. And as the pretrial motions continue to drag on in this seemingly endless back and forth between her and Justin Baldoni, the co-star turned adversary, it has become increasingly clear that this is not merely about allegations, or contracts, or defamation. This is about power, about image, about the lengths to which a star will go to protect what they believe is rightfully theirs. And the most shocking part is not just the legal filings, but the subpoenas, the media leaks. The strange alliances and betrayals that emerge like shadows from behind the curtain, reminding us that even in the world of fame, there are no true friends. Only shifting allegiances and desperate attempts at survival, and the latest twist is as dramatic as any scripted television, because Blake Lively has attempted to subpoena a private intelligence company, the very investigators who were working under the direction of powerhouse attorney Brian Friedman, to gather information on her, and, in doing so, she crossed into uncharted territory that sent shockwaves through Hollywood legal circles. Imagine the audacity of trying to pull back the veil on the very team tasked with investigating you. Imagine the desperation it signals a willingness to risk exposure of method sources and confidential records just to pry at what dirt may or may not exist. And when news of this leaked, it set social media ablaze with theories that ranged from claims of paranoia to suspicions of hidden scandals that could unravel everything, and yet the deeper you dig, the more complicated it becomes. Because the question arises is Blake truly fighting for justice and fairness? Or is this a carefully orchestrated maneuver designed to delay, confuse, and exhaust the opposition until their resources are depleted and their spirits broken, and the public, torn between fascination and fatigue, watches it all unfold like an epic saga that refuses to end? And in this spectacle, commentators like Megyn Kelly have seized their chance to launch blistering critiques, taking victory laps as if the fall of Blake Lively were a personal triumph, declaring with sharp precision that no reporter, no content creator, no lawyer worth their salt would ever take money to smear her. And that the very accusation is an insult to professionals across the board, fueling a narrative that paints Blake not as the victim, but as the aggressor, a star lashing out at shadows when she can no longer control the spotlight. And here lies the suspense, because while Baldoni may appear steady if beleaguered, and while Friedman may seem confident in his strategy, the real game is in the court of public opinion, where reputations rise and fall faster than any judge can issue a ruling. And in that court, Blake has been hemorrhaging support with each new filing, each new subpoena, each new whisper of desperation. And what began as a legal dispute now feels like a reckoning, a collision of ego, power, and perception that will leave scars no matter who walks away victorious. The second act of this unfolding saga takes us deeper into the battlefield of perception and power, where Blake Lively, once the golden girl of red carpets magazine covers and carefully curated interviews, now appears increasingly cornered by the very machine she once mastered. And it is in these moments of desperation that the cracks in her strategy become visible, because instead of presenting solid, irrefutable evidence, she has leaned into tactics that many observers describe as scattershot throwing subpoenas at journalists, influencers, investigators, and even tangentially related figures in an effort to widen the net and perhaps catch anything that might bolster her claims. And the spectacle of it has drawn in an audience far beyond the courtroom, because in Hollywood, nothing is more fascinating than watching one of its own risk collapse under the weight of their own maneuvers. And commentators like Megyn Kelly have only amplified this descent, dissecting every motion, every filing with a clinical yet cutting tone that strips away the glamour and leaves only the raw machinery of a legal war. And in her fiery rebukes, Megyn positions herself not just as a journalist, reporting the news, but as a warrior defending integrity against what she views as an insult to her profession. And in doing so, she fuels a narrative where Blake becomes the antagonist, not because of what she originally alleged, but because of how She has conducted herself since, and that is where the suspense lies, because the public is not merely evaluating the case based on legal merit. They are judging character, consistency, credibility. And in a world where image is currency, Blake is finding her bank account overdrawn, and yet she persists, filing motions, challenging opposition strategies, attempting to pry into private intelligence operations, with a determination that suggests either supreme confidence that damning secrets are hidden, or a desperate gamble that anything will emerge to justify the path she has chosen. And meanwhile, Justin Baldoni, once seen primarily as a supporting player, has quietly been recast in the public eye as the resilient underdog, the man holding on against the onslaught of a far more famous adversary. And this shift is critical because jurors, future viewers of the trial, and indeed the entire Hollywood establishment are watching and weighing the optics of every move, and Baldoni benefits. Each time Blake appears more aggressive, more scattered, more consumed by control, because sympathy gravitates toward the quieter, steadier figure in contrast. And as the months drag on, what might have been a brief skirmish has metastasized into a sprawling narrative with side plots that include Perez Hilton resisting subpoenas, Candace Owens fiercely defending her independence, and content creators across platforms nervously watching to see if they too might be pulled into the crosshairs. And each of these elements adds fuel to a growing firestorm, because when the powerful attempt to silence voices, the instinct of the crowd is not to sympathize but to resist, to rally, and to watch the mighty stumble. And herein lies the tragedy. Because Blake Lively built her career on relatability, on convincing audiences that she was just like them, albeit dressed in couture and photographed in perfect lighting. And now that same audience perceives her as the aggressor, the one lashing out against those who merely spoke their minds, and in the court of public opinion, that reversal can be far more devastating than any official ruling. And commentators seize on this, noting that even if she prevails legally, the reputational cost may be irreversible because fans, colleagues, and brands are all paying attention. And in a city where image determines casting deals, endorsements, and even friendships, being seen as vindictive or litigious can close doors faster than any scandal. And that is why each new revelation feels like another step deeper into the abyss. Not only for Blake, but for her husband, Reynolds, whose silence has been deafening, sparking whispers that even he may be privately urging restraint while publicly standing by her side. And the suspense grows, because if this continues to spiral, if subpoenas continue to pile up, if more journalists continue to turn her into a punchline, the question becomes not whether Blake Lively will win her case, but whether she will have anything left to salvage once it is over. And that is the chilling reality of Hollywood, where you can lose without technically losing, where the verdict of the public eclipses the verdict of the judge, and once the tide turns, it rarely turns back. In the next phase of this unfolding drama, we have to recognize that the stakes have only risen higher, because once the first wave of coverage hit the internet and people realized just how deep this situation might go, the commentary turned from curiosity to outrage, and from outrage to obsession, because audiences thrive on scandal and they thrive on conflict, especially when it involves household names like Blake Lively, Taylor Swift, Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni. What we are witnessing is not just a personal feud, but a public reckoning, a clash of images and narratives that were carefully constructed over years, and now risk being dismantled in the glare of relentless scrutiny. Because when people start to dig, when journalists and independent investigators begin connecting dots that were once dismissed as speculation, suddenly the narrative shifts and it becomes harder for any PR machine to maintain control. That is exactly what is happening here. As court filings mount, as leaks drip into the press, as insiders whisper to reporters, the story refuses to die down, and instead it expands, evolving into something far bigger than what any of the parties may have anticipated in the early days. What was once thought to be a simple dispute about words, reputations, and perhaps defamation has become a saga about power, about truth, about the way Hollywood protects its chosen stars and sacrifices others. And that is why paragraph 2 matters so much, because it unravels the consequences of this trial, not only for the people directly involved, but for the entire ecosystem around them. If Blake Lively loses credibility, the fallout is not just about one actress. It is about a brand. It is about endorsements, partnerships, alliances, and friendships in Hollywood that were built on the idea of her being untouchable. If Justin Baldoni is vindicated, it is not just a win for him. It becomes a symbol for every creative who has been silenced or sidelined by bigger stars, and bigger studios who did not want to risk the truth interfering with profits. And then we add Taylor Swift into the mix. The global megastar whose very presence in these leaked text messages has transformed the case into a cultural flashpoint. Because Swift is not just a musician, she is an empire. Her fandom is one of the most dedicated and mobilized forces in entertainment today. So the idea that her private words may be dragged into a courtroom is explosive beyond comprehension. It is the kind of development that forces media outlets across the globe to pause their usual coverage and zero in on the case. It turns a Hollywood legal feud into international news, because suddenly you have a convergence of music culture, Hollywood, celebrity and legal intrigue all in one place. This is not just entertainment gossip anymore. It is shaping up to be a defining story of our era about accountability, image crafting, and the inevitable collapse of secrets under sustained pressure. What makes it even more fascinating is how the public is not passively consuming this. They are actively shaping it on social media platforms. Every leaked detail becomes a hashtag. Every courtroom development becomes a trending topic, and every photo of Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds in public gets dissected for clues, as if the public has become an army of investigators, all determined to peel back the layers of Hollywood hypocrisy, and the more Lively and her team push back, the more suspicious people seem to become, because audiences today are sharper. They are tired of manufactured narratives, they crave authenticity, and when something feels staged or insincere, they turn against it with remarkable speed. That is the danger for Blake Lively here, because the court of public opinion often moves faster and hits harder than the court of law. Even if she wins certain legal battles, if she loses the trust of her audience, she loses everything. Hollywood careers are built on perception, and if that perception crumbles, the machine behind it cannot save her. What is truly ironic is that Blake Lively was long celebrated as someone who had avoided scandal, as someone who played the game smartly, staying out of controversies that plagued so many of her peers. But now, when the spotlight has turned against her, the contrast is even sharper, because people remember her carefully cultivated image of perfection, and they cannot reconcile that with the allegations and the courtroom chaos they are seeing unfold. It creates a cognitive dissonance that fuels even more discussion and more judgment. Because people are not just reacting to the facts, they are reacting to the idea that they were perhaps misled for years into believing a version of Blake Lively that was incomplete or strategically curated on the other side. Justin Baldoni has embraced the underdog role. He has framed himself as someone standing up against a system bigger than him, and whether or not that framing is entirely accurate, it resonates with people who are tired of watching the rich and powerful escape accountability. He comes across as raw, unfiltered, emotional, and in contrast to Lively's polished exterior, that rawness feels real, and people are responding to it. This is why so many are starting to reconsider who the real villain and who the real victim might be in this saga. When you add in the swirling rumors about Ryan Reynolds' involvement, his silence, his calculated public appearances, with Blake, his absence from others, it only thickens the plot. Because Reynolds has always been a master of public image with his quick wit and likable persona. But now his every move is seen through the lens of this scandal, and that is a dangerous place to be, because even humor can start to feel hollow when the public thinks you are hiding something. What makes all of this even more precarious is the timing. Hollywood is already under fire for how it handles abuse, allegations, pay disparities, and toxic work cultures. So this case is not unfolding in a vacuum. It is unfolding at a moment when audiences are ready to pounce on hypocrisy and demand change. The Lively Baldoni trial is not just a personal battle. It is a test case for how much Hollywood can still get away with in the age of transparency leaks and constant public surveillance. And every passing day raises the stakes higher as more documents surface, as more insiders come forward, as more inconsistencies in statements are exposed. It becomes increasingly clear that no matter how this ends, it will change the careers and reputations of everyone involved forever. In this sense, the trial is not just about who wins or loses in court, it is about who survives in the public eye, because the true verdict will be rendered not by a judge but by millions of people watching from their screens, deciding who they believe, who they support, and who they will never forgive again. In the aftermath of these bombshell revelations, the narrative around Blake Lively is no longer about glamour, no longer about the red carpet appearances, no longer about the curated Instagram posts. Instead, it is about accountability, about transparency, about the uncomfortable reality that even the brightest stars can stumble. And when they do, the entire world takes notice, This final stage of the unfolding saga has thrown Hollywood into a state of permanent self-reflection and the public into a mode of unforgiving scrutiny as the court prepares for what could be the final round of this bitter legal clash between Lively and Baldoni. The conversations have shifted to long-term consequences because no matter which way the gavel falls, the truth that has come out is irreversible, and the damage that has been done is already etched into public memory. Industry analysts are now openly predicting that Lively's brand has been permanently compromised, noting that while public figures can and often do recover from scandal, this particular situation is unique because it intersects legal failure, public betrayal, and the exposure of private contradictions all at once. The idea that she can stage a comeback without addressing these issues head-on seems almost impossible, especially when the court documents themselves have become viral content, discussed, dissected, and memeified across every platform from TikTok to Reddit to mainstream news cycles. The virality of this legal battle has elevated it beyond a niche Hollywood dispute. It has become a cultural moment where issues of privilege, accountability, and authenticity are being openly debated, and Lively's name is now synonymous with those very debates. Media critics argue that this scandal has effectively stripped away the protective shield celebrities once had by controlling the narrative through publicists and glossy magazine interviews, because in this new digital age, leaked court transcripts carry more weight than carefully staged press releases, and the internet is relentless in amplifying contradictions. Meanwhile, Baldoni, who initially appeared as though he would be consumed by this legal firestorm, has instead emerged with a renewed reputation. Framed as the underdog, the creative visionary unfairly maligned and ultimately vindicated. This reversal has stunned industry insiders because it is rare for Hollywood power dynamics to flip so dramatically in such a short span of time. And yet, here we are with Baldoni positioned not just as a survivor of a smear campaign, but as someone who could potentially leverage this moment into a career-defining resurgence. His team has carefully avoided gloating instead, maintaining a stance of quiet resilience, which only underscores the contrast between his measured tone and Lively's increasingly defensive outbursts. That contrast has not gone unnoticed by the public, who often rally behind figures who appear calm, authentic, and composed. Under fire, the entertainment press has seized upon this as a perfect storm of narrative irony, noting that the very accusations meant to destroy Baldoni have instead elevated him, while the aggressor is left scrambling for relevance. Hollywood itself is watching closely because the outcome of this battle will set a precedent for future disputes between stars, producers, and creatives. If Lively's aggressive approach backfires, it will serve as a cautionary tale, warning others in the industry that weaponizing influence without substantial evidence can lead to catastrophic consequences. On the flip side, if Baldoni continues to gain sympathy, it could embolden other creatives to stand firm against attempts at intimidation by bigger names or their teams. And so this case is no longer just about two individuals. It is about the recalibration of power dynamics in an industry that has thrived on silent secrecy and reputation management. The silence from other high-profile figures has also been deafening because while many are whispering behind closed doors, few are willing to go on record about Lively's situation, fearing the wrath of her remaining influence and the unpredictable fallout of aligning themselves publicly in such a heated case. Yet this very silence only fuels speculation, because when people who usually flood social media with statements suddenly retreat, the void speaks louder than words and fans notice every omission. The public has grown more savvy over the years, learning to decode these silences as indicators of behind-the-scenes turmoil, and in this case, those silences are deafening to the point of becoming a narrative in themselves. What makes this final stretch so devastating for Lively is not just the legal pressure, but the crumbling of her carefully constructed public image. The curated persona of the down-to-earth, relatable star has been replaced with the perception of someone calculated, vindictive, and desperate to protect a crumbling empire. Her brand endorsements are reportedly under review. Her production deals in limbo, and her once guaranteed magazine covers are now uncertain as editors quietly assess whether featuring her aligns with the current cultural climate. Hollywood does not forgive easily when it comes to public trust, and the brands that fund its stars are even less forgiving. Because at the end of the day, business comes before loyalty and money flows. Where public sentiment allows, as a result, Lively faces not just legal defeat but potential financial exile from the very industry that once celebrated her every move. As for the broader public, this saga has reinforced a growing cynicism about celebrity culture. The idea that the glamorous lives of the rich and famous are often underpinned by manipulation, deception, and hidden agendas, has gained traction, and Lively's downfall has become the latest case study fueling that skepticism. Commentators note that this shift could signal a new era, where fans are less willing to blindly worship celebrities and more eager to hold them accountable for their actions. This is why the fallout from this battle will extend far beyond the courtroom. It will shape how audiences interact with celebrity culture for years to come. In the end, the tragedy of this saga lies in the fact that it could have been avoided had Lively chosen transparency over aggression, humility over hubris, and truth over spin. Instead, the path she chose has left her vulnerable and exposed, and the repercussions will likely echo long after the legal dust has settled. Baldoni, on the other hand, now carries both the scars and the strength of this ordeal, emerging as a figure whose career may well be defined not by the roles he plays on screen, but by the role he played in standing firm against a storm designed to consume him as Hollywood recalibrates around the lessons of this saga. The final chapter is not simply about who wins in court, but about who survives in the hearts and minds of the public. And in that battle, it seems increasingly clear that Lively has already lost, and no ruling, no verdict, no carefully scripted comeback attempt will be able to erase the damage already done, because the court of public opinion has rendered its verdict, and in Hollywood, that is the only one that truly matters. In the aftermath of all the courtroom battles, the leaked texts, the subpoenas, and the public scrutiny, it has become painfully clear that Hollywood is not just a world of glitz and glamour, it is a world where perception power and public opinion can change overnight. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni's saga has shown the fragility of carefully curated images and the permanence of digital evidence. Every action, every statement, and every move is magnified, analyzed, and often weaponized against the people involved. What once could have been handled quietly behind closed doors is now a public spectacle broadcast to millions of fans across social media platforms and news outlets. The consequences of this are both personal and professional, with reputations at stake, careers potentially derailed, and alliances tested in ways that were unimaginable. Just a few decades ago, the court of public opinion has become as influential, if not more so, than the court of law, and in this case, the impact is undeniable. Justin Baldoni's measured responses, his calm demeanor, and strategic restraint have positioned him as a resilient underdog, while Blake Lively's aggressive tactics and public defensive stance have fueled criticism and skepticism from both media insiders and fans alike. The lesson from this story is clear. Transparency, authenticity, and careful strategy matter more than ever. In a world where everything is recorded, shared, and dissected, every misstep can become viral content, and every calculated move can backfire. Yet amidst the legal maneuvers and celebrity drama, there is a reminder of human resilience. The way people recover, rebuild, and adapt to challenges is inspiring, and even in a high-stakes environment, lessons about humility, responsibility, and accountability resonate strongly for anyone watching this unfolding saga. In the end, this story is not just about who wins or loses in court, it is about the lasting impact on personal brand public perception and the cultural shift in how we view fame, power, and accountability in modern Hollywood.